This episode of the podcast is brought to you by patreon.com/lightscameranonsense. Visit patreon.com/lightscameranonsense to help support your favorite new movie podcast. Now, let's roll that reel.
All right, we are now recording.
Whoa. Fucking hell. Awesome. Amazing.
Perfect timing. That's wonderful. Again, it's par for the course. If we have a normal recording session where nothing goes wrong, I get worried.
Yeah. Those are the ones we lose.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh well. Hello everyone and welcome to Lights Camera Nonsense, where we give you all the latest movie magic you may have missed. I'm Nick, the ultimate movie awards show presenter, Simmons.
And I'm Zach Fatality Smith.
Oh, that makes sense. On theme.
Yeah. You know how I like theming.
Oh yeah, we love to, same colors, same backgrounds, just
yeah.
we're the best at what we do, Zach, and I really appreciate
yes.
I really appreciate what you do for
very
me.
good.
And on Saturday, April 24th, 2021, let's dive into the previews. But before we do that, Zach, how can people find us?
They can find us in a number of places. First, you can visit our website at lightscameranonsense.com, or you can also visit our Patreon at patreon.com/lightscameranonsense.
That's perfect. You can donate as low as $1 and help support the show. But if you're also watching us on YouTube for free, we totally understand. Just make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so that you can get notified every time we drop a new video. But let's dive into the previews, Zach. What have you been watching?
So first up on the plate, I, of course, finished or watched the last episode of Falcon and the Winter Soldier that just dropped on Friday.
Oh, right. Part 7 of our Falcon and the Winter Soldier recap series.
Yes. Now, to be fair, we had a truncated, brief mention of it last week because we knew we were going to be coming into it this week.
Yeah.
So Falcon and the Winter Soldier, finished out. I think overall pretty solid. I enjoyed my time with it. There are very few problems I have with it. I will say that weird CG reared its little head.
Is it another Falcon wing situation?
Okay. Yeah, there's something about it. I don't know what they're doing with the wingsuit, but it looks a little rough around the edges whenever Sam's flying around.
Okay.
Fast, by the way, not like coming down to the ground, like hovering or anything like that. Yes, just like that.
Yep. I know how to glide.
But yeah, obviously you're like one of those squirrels. That's a
flying squirrel.
Yeah, blight against God. It shouldn't exist
because they have just cartilage coming in between their arms and legs.
No, it's the ultimate weapon. Land animals were not meant to fly.
What about flying animals that don't?
Well, they have feet, so it's okay.
Well, so do flying squirrels.
Yeah, but the normal squirrels were around first.
How do you know that?
Because I was there. I saw the first one. I try to forget that day every hour of my life.
The great battle of the flying squirrels versus the normal ones. What do they call them? They just call them groundies.
Yeah. That's derogatory, sir.
Oh, sorry. Towards squirrels, you're right.
Yes.
We should ask Kronk.
Yeah. So you can squeak all the way
squeakums.
to a better understanding of the flying squirrels.
Falcon and Winter Soldier.
This is derailed immediately.
Falcon and Winter Soldier.
Yeah, so other than that weird CG, very much enjoyed it. Ended pretty much how you expected. I was saying this to Casey because she didn't watch this one with me. She watched WandaVision with me, and then she was like, I'll let you watch Falcon and Winter Soldier and get back to me.
Fair enough.
And I was telling her that nothing in Falcon and the Winter Soldier really feels too twisty or like, oh, I didn't see that one coming, or I can't believe what's happening in front of me. It's very much point A to point B this whole season, and I don't think that's necessarily to its detriment, because as a result, it feels like the through line is clearer whereas WandaVision had a tendency to kind of derail itself just by virtue of like the mystery box sort of thing, that sometimes paid off and sometimes didn't. Whereas with Falcon and Winter Soldier, since you know what you're getting and there is no mystery box, then it's like you kind of everything you get from the show is what you expect, good and bad. I know I've seen a lot of criticism about its insistence and sincerity on certain things, almost to the point where it's a little saccharine for some, or too on the nose, as it were, which is a fair assessment, I think, but I also don't think that's a bad thing.
So can I ask you to be more specific when it comes to the subject matter that they're talking about, that people are considering too on the nose? Specifically, like the racial issues that Sam faces, in terms of like, he's a black man that by the end of the show, spoiler, is wielding the shield, the Captain America shield. He is becoming Captain America. And so there's a lot of discussion on what exactly that means for a black man in America, and whether or not that is in the real world or like in the show, in the context of the show.
The discussion is in the show, but the criticism I'm seeing is outside of the show, at least in the way it's handled, because whether or not this is a issue with scripting or just the way they approach the subject matter in general, it comes up with the idea of radicalization and whether or not Carly, or this version of Flag Smasher, or leader of the Flag Smashers,
right,
whether or not her actions are justified, and kind of like looking at that, well, this is a cause and effect sort of thing. The reason that she's acting this way is because of a response. It's a response to something. And like the way they delve into that, I've seen some people kind of take issue with like, you guys need, it's like I said, it's very on the nose, where basically you at one point you have Sam literally looking at the camera and going like, figure your shit out.
Yeah.
Otherwise you're going to get more extremists. Also, just go ahead.
I was going to say that message, that whole tirade that he had with the GRC, I think.
Yeah.
Global Relocation
Committee. Yeah.
That message was not directed towards those characters, but was, I guarantee you, directed towards U.S. senators and congressmen and politicians of the world, like in the real world. Like, what are you doing?
Right. Which gets back to my original point, and like the criticism of these kinds of things, where you have that, or Sam sitting down with Isaiah and them like having a pretty long discussion on what it means for a black man to be Captain America, right, and like how hard that is, and how Isaiah feels like that's not doable just because they're gonna keep on trying to beat Sam down. And there's like this undercurrent of Sam's idealism, and like, well, what's the point of not trying, or like, what's the point of all this suffering if you don't try, right? And so I've seen the criticism of like, yeah, that's really on the nose, and that's like super obvious, and there's nothing going on with the script that is like subversive or anything like that, just because everybody has a hard-on for subversion these days.
I was gonna say, like, just because WandaVision prior to this show coming out had like expectations broken by the end of each episode, just based on the genre flipping and the way that they were constantly. You literally brought it up just a few minutes ago about how it was constantly changing the expectation for how the show was going to go. But the people who were trying to take this show at face value and just read the script for what it is, or the dialogue being spoken, I should say, are clearly not getting that this message is made. Like, there is a specific message.
It's supposed to be that way.
It's supposed to be that direct. It's supposed to be that deep. If the message is not is not clear to you, it's because you're not opening up and listening to the message.
Right. Well, and I said it before too. Like, for all its pluses, WandaVision trying to subvert everything every episode, and then essentially just being another MCU film by the end of it
Yeah.
that's not subversion totally. You're still getting what you expected. So like part of this whole deal is me being one confused about certain people. I mean, obviously tastes differ from person to person, but quite frankly, I've enjoyed Falcon and the Winter Soldier more than WandaVision.
Yeah.
I still like WandaVision, but I think ultimately the payoff for Falcon is more in line with what it set out from the jump than what WandaVision purported itself to be.
I think there's definitely going to be a much bigger impact with the end of Falcon and Winter Soldier than there is for WandaVision. As much as they want to tout how specifically WandaVision is tied into Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. But, I mean, news broke out as soon as the finale came out that they're already writing Captain America 4 with the Falcon as Captain America, of course. Sorry, go ahead.
And then my second thing, the second thing I'm confused about is like people's weird obsession with the idea that something can't be good if it's playing it straight or if it's sincere. And I do think that Falcon and the Winter Soldier does have script issues. Some of the dialogue does not really flow as naturally as you would want it to. It feels like a lot of the times that they're kind of sermonizing and like saying exactly what they mean.
Yeah.
But honestly, I'd rather have sincerity than like this weird desire to like make everything subtle and gray and shit. Like subtlety's nice, but not everything needs to be subtle.
And not everything.
Some shit can hit you over the head with it.
Yeah. One thing I want to bring up that we might be able to tie into what we're basically talking about right now, and it was a big kind of thing that bothered me by the time I rolled credits. Even after the mid-credits scene. Stinger, which isn't really a stinger.
Which was nothing, yeah.
Until we get announcements for what people are like hinting at and rumoring at, which is the Thunderbolts show that has not been talked about at all by Marvel.
Yeah. It's another Mephisto sort of
thing. That's the thing, is people building up this show and putting it on this platform that's so high, and it's like, we got Avengers Endgame, so we should be able to expect that with every single Marvel property going forward. And it's like, come on, do you not realize that was the end of a saga and they're trying to start something new? But no, what I was going to say is one thing that bothered me about this show, or at least I should say about the finale, this specific episode, is that by the end of the mid-credits stinger, every character got what they wanted.
Yeah, pretty much.
Literally everything,
except for one person, but
which person specifically?
Carly.
Although, well, here's the thing:
you could make the argument that her message has gotten across, but then they have kind of the follow up to that, in which I don't know. Are we gonna go on full spoilers here? Because I don't think that what we've set up to now is like super huge.
I actually, you're correct. I think we're still a little bit too close to the premiere of this episode to really spoil it. But I do want to just briefly touch on the fact that really kind of every character who set out to accomplish a goal basically got what they were wanting. Granted, it's not the end of any of these characters' stories, except for the one that we just mentioned. But that's the one thing we'll spoil. That's fine. Yeah. But that just kind of bothered me because of how everything else was set up to be this very serious social issue type of discussion that was basically being built up throughout the series. And I do think that it is the subtext that a lot of people are either reading into or not noticing whatsoever, which is what it's like to be a black person in America and what they have to go through.
Yeah.
And using a Marvel show to bring up this message and talk about it and not make it the theme of every episode, because there is a huge overall narrative that they have to get from A to B for. But I think that the way that they were able to do that, I think they accomplished magnificently. And I think by the end of the day, I enjoyed the entire season. And what I didn't like about the finale is a personal preference, but it was just, I wanted to bring it up because it kind of bothered me.
That's fair. I also had my issues with the finale, but they're more like I I felt like the plan for everyone in that final episode was pretty nebulous. There's nothing concrete to like say like Sam and Bucky know what they're doing. Like they don't lay out anything specific. And the same goes for the Flag Smashers. They're just like constantly like stick to the plan, stick to the plan. Like, well, what's the plan?
Yeah.
And then by the end of it, it's like kind of feels like there was no plan. I mean, there was, because you're telling me there was a plan, but I don't really feel like anything was really.
It's kind of
happening.
Like the worst case, like the worst version of the Christopher Nolan's Joker.
yeah.
Like
it's
the
just,
anti.
Well, that's kind of what it feels like. It just feels like chaos
Yeah.
for the majority of that like final 30-40 minute battle scene, or however long it is.
It felt like a long battle.
It did, because they're going through buildings. There's a helicopter chase scene. There's fucking hostage situation. I mean, it's kind of all over the place in terms of the action. But thankfully, the way they close out the show is, I feel, the way the show is strongest, which is on a personal and character-driven level. I think as much as people want to complain about, again, the sincerity of the show from time to time, I do think its strongest, its biggest strength is its character stuff,
Right?
And the conversations it has,
And the relatability of the characters as well.
Yeah. So I'm glad at least that they close out the show that way, and it's not like big action scene and then roll credits.
Yeah.
And the action's more or less fine. It's give or take the CG stuff that I already touched on. It's just kind of there though. It doesn't really feel like there's ever a question of whether or not there's going to be a swerve or anything like that. And again,
nobody was expecting a twist in the story at that point.
Yeah.
Except,
but all that to say, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, the only quote unquote twist that unfolded itself to be nothing was really that Walker came out and was just like, I'm not with you guys, but I'm also with you guys because I want to defeat the Flag Smashers, and then he ends up saving people, and then mid-credits scene. So that was the only thing about his character that I felt like his potential by the end of the finale of the first season felt kind of squandered. But I feel like they have plans for that character. So
here's the thing, though, and this is kind of getting into the territory of like, you don't know the comics and that kind of bullshit.
Fuck off. To them,
the U.S. agent, who is what that character ends up being by the end of it, is not. That's kind of in line. Marvel has never really like truly, and this goes for really any comic book character. They're never evil forever. They're never good forever. Because they always shaking up the status quo is a way to sell shit, right? But then that way to sell shit becomes canon. So now we're looking at the canon of U.S. Agent, where it's like, oh, he's kind of a dirtbag asshole, but he still is kind of treading the line of like, well, you saved some people, so you're not like the worst, even though you're the worst,
right?
So yeah, I don't know. I do agree on some level that because it's kind of a beginning and transition for the character, that the payoff is a little wonky or soft for him, but I obviously we're gonna get him back at some point.
You hear that, Wyatt Russell? You're wonky and soft.
Not for the majority of it. I just think the payoff is
right. You did a good job,
but
though.
what are you expecting from a fucking movie / television universe that like waits 23 movies to resolve some character conflicts or character evolutions or whatever,
right?
Like it's not too surprising. You take it as it comes.
You really do. And we have so many superhero movies and TV shows to come out over the course of this entire year. I think we have to just kind of I don't want to say grin and bear it because that makes it seem like we're suffering, but to be like, just strap in, because
strap in.
We've crossed the first hump of this roller coaster. We're riding down, and that's not like quality-wise, that's not a quality-wise meter. I'm just saying, like, this is part of the ride. It's the beginning of the ride. So just get ready for more loop-de-loops. Loki, I believe, is the next show.
Loki's next show, followed by Shang-Chi, which is the next movie. Or no, Black
Widow's the next movie, but Black Widow comes out after Loki, I believe.
Right. Yes.
So it'll be No, it should be Black. I will look this up.
Black Widow's May, I think.
No, it got pushed.
Did it?
Yeah, it did.
Maybe they pushed it.
I will look it up. I'm looking it up.
Okay.
I misspelled Widow.
Window. Black Window.
Black Widow is coming out in July 9th, 2021. Let's do Loki TV show. Loki is coming out. The first episode comes out, if it will just fucking tell me. June 11th, so a month before.
Okay.
So we're literally getting Marvel content with every month.
Back to back, yeah.
But yeah, Falcon and Winter Soldier.
Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, enjoyed it. Now, with that being said, before I move on to the next thing, Nick, we did talk a little bit before we jumped on the hot mics and discovered that we have watched exactly the same thing.
Yes.
So rather than me lead this podcast, regaling everyone, I'm gonna hand it off to you to move on to our next topic.
Such power. So the next thing that we both watched.
Yes.
I just fucking blanked. I'm sorry.
What did I watch?
No, I just want to. I'm like, do we want to pivot to this thing or do we want to pivot to the next thing?
Yeah.
We watched a lot of content over the last week, and actually a lot of it dropped Friday.
On Friday.
Yeah. So let's switch it over to a movie, and then we'll switch it back to the other show. How about that?
Okay, sounds good.
So we watched Mortal Kombat 2021.
Yes, yeah, we did. Yeah, what are your thoughts? What's your initial thought coming out of it?
So we both, let's just recap real quick. We both watched on our own time after recording, I believe it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, the first Mortal Kombat.
2 weeks
2 weeks ago. And we watched it kind of as a goof, kind of as a fun, whatever thing. And
it's campy nonsense.
It can be fun.
Movie.
It's not the perfect movie. It's very much of its time. The special effects were not great.
Or shit. No, they're just shit. Straight up.
Okay. So yeah. And then in my own free time, the following week, I watched Mortal Kombat Annihilation, and it was worse. So it's funny that you say that the special effects in Mortal Kombat 1 were shit when...
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's a downward spiral.
It really is. And then in my own free time, I watched Mortal Kombat Scorpion's Revenge on HBO Max.
Highest rated Mortal Kombat movie.
It's like an 80-something% on Rotten Tomatoes. And it's basically animated in the same style as the DC animated films because same studio, Warner Brothers Animation. And... I mean, if you want more Scorpion, you get more Scorpion. It's basically, it's doing the exact same thing as every other Mortal Kombat adaptation, which is, hey, let's kind of recap the first 2 or 3 games. And if we want to add more content, more backstories for some of the characters, that's what we'll do. And I did enjoy it. I didn't finish it, Zach, I should say. But I got the gist. I watched 80% of it. I got the gist. I'm like, the fatalities in it, first of all, this came out around the same time as Mortal Kombat 11, I believe. And they do a lot of the zoom-in X-ray fatalities, which was fantastic. But some of the dialogue in that film was not great. And I honestly don't get how...
What?
Yeah, I don't...
Not great dialogue in a Mortal Kombat movie?
They did...
That'll definitely not come up in further discussion.
I was going to say, I don't remember them saying in the animated movie ever, like, fatality or flawless victory, which is weird to me because in every other movie, that's what they say. Because you have to
shoehorn it in.
You gotta shoehorn in the video game iconic lines, even though they don't contextually make any sense.
No, they definitely don't.
They make the most sense in the original Mortal Kombat movie, only because Shang Tsung is like overseeing some of the fights. But like, when was there a flawless victory in the first Mortal Kombat movie? Because there wasn't. He got his ass handed to him.
No, there wasn't. So yeah, the fact that he said it was like, are you sure?
Yeah, the only time it's made sense is in this new one when Kung Lao kicks the shit out of Kitara, or not Kitara,
Nitara.
Yeah. Stupid fucking naming. The character was only in one game, I don't even know why.
Well, it's funny because when the last trailer dropped, you sent me a message that was like, "Oh, looks like Natara's in it," and I'm like, "Who?" You sent me a picture of her, and I'm like, "Yeah, I don't fucking know, man. That's got to be a Armageddon or Deception."
I think it was
after Deadly Alliance.
I want to say
I played Deadly Alliance. I technically played Armageddon.
she was in Deadly Alliance.
Oh fuck! All right, well,
That's okay. That game came out like over 10 years ago. Yeah, she was in Deadly Alliance and Deception, and she cameoed in a couple other games. Like she cameoed in 11, but probably background character. Anyway, I don't know if you can me. So we watched the latest Mortal Kombat movie when it dropped on HBO Max.
yes.
And Zach, give me your thoughts.
So a lot of discussion on the value of camp these days. It seems like coming off the heels, rather, not hills, heels of Godzilla versus Kong. Is that right?
Yeah.
Is it Godzilla versus
Yes,
Kong?
Godzilla vs. Kong. Holy crap.
Well, I can never remember which one goes first.
It's easy. All you have to do is remember our poster.
No, it's not, because there's literally another fucking movie that came out years ago,
King
decades
Kong vs.
ago.
Godzilla, which came out in '64, I think. Buy our poster.
Yes.
Store.icecameraNonsense.com.
I'm a Godzilla
With a bun, and I'm a fucking ape man, which I feel is regressive. But anyway, I get it. I'm hairy and monkey-like.
Yeah, so we just got that big old blockbuster B movie nonsense, and then here we are.
We're finally getting a high-budget Mortal Kombat movie.
High budget?
90 million, which is more money than you have in your bank account, sir.
Well, it's definitely more than the other ones. That's for sure.
I think, yeah, let me actually look up the budget for the first two, because I remember us looking them up after we watched the first movie.
Yeah, I think the first one was 13.
They didn't have a lot of faith in these back in the day.
Well, they wanted a quick cash grab is what they wanted.
Yeah, because the third one had just come out, I think.
Which is why the first one just looks like every fucking person has a rubber costume on.
Well, you say that, but there's also a character in this movie that has a rubber costume on.
The rubber costume on,
So the first movie, the budget, it doesn't give me the budget. It just gives me the gross. Never mind. Curse you, box office mojo. That's what I get. Keep going.
I felt like you were really wanting to pour your heart and soul into this budget thing.
No, just keep going. I'll look it up. 20 million. It was 20 million. And then Mortal Kombat Annihilation was probably more, I think. It was.
Yeah, you're probably right. Yeah. Which is why it was even worse. Because it lost even more money.
30 million. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they tripled the budget for this one. Which I feel like adjusted for inflation, it's probably around the same. Yeah. But like newer effects. Anyway, let's get into the fucking plot and characters and story and everything.
Yeah, so Mortal Kombat 2021. We start off with classic Sub-Zero Scorpion battle in which neither the people in it are currently Scorpion and Sub-Zero. They're Bihan and Hanzo Hisashi.
Yes.
Hanzo ends up dying, basically, becomes...
This is typical lore stuff for people who are fans of the Mortal Kombat series.
And then we kind of migrate over into the current day where you find Cole Young, who's this cage fighter who I guess sucks.
But at one time didn't fight,
but he does okay. Well, there's this weird throwaway line like right at the beginning. It's like, oh, to be a good fighter, you got to defend, and it's like, oh, okay, so that's going to be part of his character going forward. Like he's going to learn to defend. When in actuality, all that happens is he gets the power to not defend.
He gets the Black Panther suit power, basically.
Yeah. But anyway, so. He is, you know what? I want to give the movie its credit here. They do a thing with Cole where going into it, I didn't know any sort of details surrounding his character. He just kind of seemed like he was going to be the audience stand-in, everyman character. Like, this is how you're going to...
I mean, is he not?
He is, but they at least do something a little extra with it, where he ends up being a descendant of Hanzo's.
Yeah. Spoilers, by the way.
Yeah, fuck it. Who cares? It's Mortal Kombat, which we'll get. I'll get there too. So it's a little something extra. It's not much, and it's basically putting the chosen one shit on top of the everyman shit. But that's something. And then turns out the tattoo he has to indicate that he's part of a bloodline is not part of the bloodline.
I just want to interject really quick. So when you watch the trailer for this movie, the trailer cutter really, really, really fucked up by giving the line delivery like, what's that birthmark? He has a birthmark. What does that mean? What was it? What was the line delivery?
If you're talking about in the gym, it was something like, what is the mark you have? Or like, where'd you get that mark or something like that?
Oh, no.
It's a birthmark.
I remember. He's like, he's got a birthmark. What does that mean? It means I was born with it. And I'm like, well, fucking yeah, obviously. But they flip those lines in the movie because that makes sense from a conversation point of view. And that when I watched the trailer, that's what fucking that's what dug its claws into me. Yeah, I was just like, who fucking wrote this movie? And I'm glad that it actually made sense. Sorry, continue.
So it ends up being that there are more people that have this mark, and then that's the signifier that you're a defender of Earthrealm in Mortal Kombat.
Or you have ringworm. But yeah.
Yeah, one of the two. And then in classic Shang Tsung fashion, best way to win is cheat the fuck out of the competition.
Yeah.
To the point where, hey, you don't even really have a tournament in this movie.
Yeah.
You kind of do because
they have a little mini
do some shit.
Yeah, everyone's just cheating before the actual tournament so that they don't have to lose the real tournament.
Yeah.
I do appreciate that. I appreciate that it's not actually just like them in a ring fighting one after another Karate Kid style, because that's fucking lame and boring. They use that as a story beat to like introduce levels from the game. They're like, hey, you could teleport us anywhere, can't you, Raiden?
My caveat to this is it's in the last 15 minutes of the movie.
Yeah, it's
which means you rush the fuck through those fights.
Yeah.
I'm saying all this. I know what it's coming across as, and that I didn't enjoy it. I actually did like this movie, or for what it was anyway. I had fun with it. I think up to a certain point, it does what it's trying to do really well. Given the things it's employing, I don't think you necessarily needed a character like Cole in this to still be able to say it's a Mortal Kombat movie,
right?
Because the shit that they have in there is, I think, really cool, lore wise, and like
it starts
connecting
off strong.
To the game.
It starts off strong with the Scorpion and Sub-Zero scene,
but even with the stuff when they're like training, so like eventually they get to a point where they they're like, Cole, you're shit at fighting.
Say everyone's shit.
Pretty much.
Raiden's
Sonya doesn't even have a mark, so she's just kind of around. But even though she wants to help, Jax gets his arms ripped off like minute 20 of the movie.
Yeah, he's got to get the robot arms somehow, Zach.
And then they got to deal with Kano, who killed one of the previous. Yeah, you can go on your little love rant if you want.
Right now, or do you want?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Kano's the best in this.
He's really funny.
He's like he doesn't have to be funny. First of all,
yeah.
He is supposed to be. He's always been a villain character in the games, and they choose to use him as kind of an anti-hero for a large portion of the movie, until they decide to flip him over to the evil side, of course, because he's a character with a laser beam in his freaking head.
Yeah. Who's like one of the mainstay villains of the entire franchise.
Yeah. So I mean, he had no right being as funny as he was, and I think that I don't think all of his lines were delivered perfectly. I don't think a lot of them landed perfectly, but like just some of the I guarantee you they were ADR'd, but some of the line delivery for when they're like walking away from a scene and you could still hear him like asking questions and shit. I'm like, that's stuff that happens in real life that they don't capture in movies.
The minor shit. Yeah, the one that got me big time was when Liu Kang is walking up to him, and they've like been traversing in the like desert or some shit for a while to find this like magical monk area where they got to train for Mortal Kombat. And Liu Kang just kind of like appears over a hill, and he's like, he shoots a fireball at him, and then, of course, everybody goes like, "Whoa, what the fuck? That was a fireball!" And so Liu Kang is kind of very quickly explaining like, "Hey, this is not where you need to be. Follow me." And then he like walks up to Kano and like puts his hand on his shoulder, and Kano goes like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah, exactly. The fuck?
It's like, it's so random, and no one sells it or anything. It's just there. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff like that.
Any other movie that line would have been cut or like just edited out.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that they left it in. He was just kind of the highlight of the movie for me, even after he switched sides and he was still delivering some lines. And
yeah, I think the issue fundamentally with the movie is going to boil down to script. Pretty wooden most of the time. Now, I'm not saying by any stretch of the imagination that any of the Mortal Kombat movies that came before had a dynamic, verbose script by any means.
Right.
So you kind of know what you're getting there. But I feel like a lot of the leaning on Kano's humor and stuff like that.
They won't be able to do that anymore.
They will not. Well, they might. You know, it's Mortal Kombat. People just, you know, appear.
Oh shit! I just realized that they hint at.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Most of it is just kind of things are happening, and then they'll interject with a Kano response, which is like a crowd pleaser.
Yeah.
At one point, Cabal shows up, and he plays much of the same type of character. I really liked his shtick too.
So his shtick, which hilariously enough is played by the actor who played Charles Manson in both Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and in Mindhunters.
Yeah.
Same actor. Because that really bothered me. I had to look that up to find out who that was, because I'm like, he sounds familiar. And yeah, that was really weird. He also didn't have to be that witty one-liner guy.
No, I don't ever recall Cabal being that as a character in the games, but I don't think Cabal was much of a character at all in the games anyway, like just period.
No.
So if you're going to have fun with a character, like, go for it.
Which is so weird, because they can sprinkle in that personality type of dialogue into the other villains that have zero lines, like Natara and Reiko.
Well, let's be real. Natara's there to job.
Yeah.
Like, they needed to kill someone in that training area that wasn't a good person.
Yeah.
And Natara was the one to get it.
They basically needed specific kills and specific scenes for specific reasons, and it very much felt that way. Like, we need to have a character die in one of the iconic levels that we're gonna warp to, which is,
even though they don't kill that character in the most iconic way on that stage.
they use a fatality from the games, from the most recent
They
games.
They do, yeah. But if you're going to go to that level...
Yeah, throw them in spikes, you know?
Yeah, there's a lot of fan service in the movie. And I think that gets to the point of probably you're only really going to enjoy this movie if you have some attachment to the games on any level.
Yeah.
Because it's fun. It's fun to see that stuff. There's a lot here. Even if it's like at one point they're walking through the temple that Liu Kang, Kung Lao, and Raiden are occupying, and or Raiden.
What are you laughing about?
Just the pronunciation mix-up in the original Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, well, and they also spell it Rayden,
yeah,
so they fucked it up that way.
Oh, real quick, there's a really good goof. So, basically, Jax tracks Cole down and says, "Oh, hey, by the way, you're part of Mortal Kombat, and Sub-Zero's trying to kill you."
Yeah,
essentially what it boils down to. And Jax sends Cole to meet Sonya. And there he finds kind of like Sonya's a little bit of a conspiracy theorist, even though it ends up being true.
Yeah.
So she's got all the pictures of like
yarn and
previous
tasks
Mortal Kombats and stuff like that. Like
Easter eggs of characters.
Yeah, characters from later games and stuff like that. But there's a bit where she points to a picture that's literally just Mortal Kombat, like painted on a wall.
Yeah.
And Cole's like, it's fucking spelled wrong.
Yeah. I'm glad. That's probably my favorite line of the entire movie.
Yeah.
Because they didn't have to do that, but they do it because they know how tongue in cheek that is.
Yeah.
I just don't understand people shitting on this movie for expecting it to be a masterpiece.
No. So like a lot of my stuff with it is nitpicky.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I enjoyed it. I was sitting there and I'm like, I can't believe I'm enjoying this more than I enjoyed Godzilla vs. Kong.
Yeah. Honestly, my biggest thing, my biggest takeaway from this movie is, and after reading reviews from people online and, actual movie reviewers and newspapers and stuff on forums and Rotten Tomatoes, I walked away from this movie going, that was exactly what I expected. And this movie,
more or less,
Mortal Kombat. I think this version of Mortal Kombat, you literally cannot make a Mortal Kombat version or adaptation any more of a film than this one is. If you get what I mean.
I disagree, but personally, I'm not a big fan of the fact that they didn't have the tournament. That's just me, though. So, like, I know you liked that they kind of. It's more of a outside, like, oh, it's not. You're not just in a arena doing that. To me, it felt a little bit like a cop out until I realized, like, by the end of it, like, oh, okay, we're essentially getting a prequel before the first movie.
Right.
Is what this is setting up to be.
Right.
Because you got characters dying and like hinting at coming back or. Being morphed into other characters. I mean, there's deliberate decisions in one of the characters' designs, one of the villains' designs in this, to basically tell you, in any future movies, this is who they're gonna be.
And I think that's even more leading into the fan service and.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's straight up lore in here. I don't think I finished my thought about it earlier, but they're walking through a temple and Shinnok's amulet is just like hanging out, like so.
Kano takes it, and you never see him put it back.
Well, I think it's implied that he puts it back because Liu Kang knows he took it and is like put that back.
But he can always take it again, being the dirtbag that he is.
Yeah, true. They got a lot of good fan service stuff in here. You got Shang Tsung, doing his eating the scenery thing with your soul is now mine.
I mean, not only eating the scenery, but eating Kung Lao's soul. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
he's that's a buffet. For that guy.
It is a buffet. I'm also not a huge fan of like the whole affinity thing. So there's this like weird thing that they're doing where to discover your power to be like more, like to be able to compete more readily in Mortal Kombat, you have to like discover your affinity, which is like a secret power. So Liu Kang has a fireball affinity.
Yeah.
They turn Kano's laser eye into affinity, even though in the games it's just like he literally has a cybernetic fucking eye. And then Sonya ends up getting an affinity eventually, which is like some psionic pulsar blast.
Yeah.
Which it's kind of a callback or reference to is it Cassie that has that stuff?
Yeah.
Or is it Sonya?
It's Cassie.
So in the games, Cassie, her daughter, has those like kind of psionic arm bands or whatever. I'm not a huge fan of that. Like this insistence to turn these things into like, oh, you discovered your secret power, to the point where Cole, our audience stand-in, gets literal plot armor.
Yeah.
Like literally, they just made plot armor the power,
and it doesn't look great.
It doesn't. But ultimately, you're still getting your Sub-Zero and Scorpion fights. It's really graphic, and like you definitely get that bit of it. It does not hold any punches, theoretically or
metaphorically.
or theoretically or in actuality.
Oh, no, you're right. In any sense.
But yeah, my biggest gripe is that because this is a setup of like Shang Tsung is just a big fucking cheater who wants to end the tournament before it starts. You like we've discussed it. They kind of have their tournament where everybody gets kind of teleported to different areas.
Yeah,
but it's not the tournament.
No, and
so you're missing stuff like Shao Kahn. Obviously, Luke Cage isn't in it. He's spoiler teased for the sequel.
Johnny Cage.
Yeah, Johnny Cage. Did I just say Cage?
You said Luke Cage, which is a Marvel.
Oh,
character.
did I?
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay.
That's funny. Yes, Johnny Cage, not Luke Cage. Yeah. So, and for anyone who doesn't know, Joe Talzin,
who plays Sub-Zero. Yeah,
he plays Sub-Zero. Is signed on for 4 other movies after this.
Yeah.
So clearly, if it does well, then they're gonna keep going with it. But because of that, they do this sort of, like I said, prequel thing before the first movie, which is fine, and ultimately I enjoyed what was there, but it's still kind of like something's missing, like there's a majority of what you would expect from a Mortal Kombat movie is here. There's just a little bit something specific not there. And then, yeah, of course, it's pretty wooden throughout.
The underlying DNA of the what the movie is based off of, which is the game series, which is set around this tournament, which I totally understand, especially with how narrative-driven the latest games ever since the 2011 remake have been, and how much there is a story and backbone and lore that they're kind of dragging into this new adaptation. It's interesting to see where they will go if they continue on and make sequels. I'm looking at the box office numbers right now, and we're only a day away from
a day. Yeah.
And you have to remember that it's being split in between HBO Max subscribers' fees
and a theatrical
release. So bear that in mind. But you have to also remember there are people who are probably subscribing to HBO Max specifically for this adaptation.
And also worth remembering, real quick before you read that number, Godzilla vs. Kong similarly had a kind of a low number, and then after more solid numbers came in, it's the biggest fucking release of the year so far.
Yeah.
So
and then you have to also remember that that with these theatrical movies being released on HBO Max, they're only there for a limited time before they're taken off, and you can only see them in theaters. So I believe it's a 30 days you're able to watch it. So for that month that it comes out, you can watch it on HBO Max, and then you have to go watch it in theaters if it's still in theaters, and then you have to wait for them to put it back on HBO Max.
Yeah,
that's the plan. And it's a solid one.
It's a plan. Yeah.
It's a plan. If people want to watch it on HBO Max and then they watch it once and then a month later they're like, hey, do you want to watch Mortal Kombat again? Yeah, but we're gonna have to go watch it in theaters. All right, well, I'm willing to. I really enjoyed the movie. That's their hope. That every audience member wants to do that. So domestic, it has made $9,030,000. Worldwide, worldwide $19,730,000. So not bad. Budget was 90.
Budget on there?
Budget was 90.
That's not too shabby for one day. And it's been out outside of the U.S. for about a week, I think.
April 8th.
Maybe a couple days?
April 8th.
Okay,
in,
so
in areas of Europe and Latin America. So.
Okay, well, their general gross is generally lower. Generally lower. Yeah, you see the majority of a box office haul come from obviously the U.S. or China. So, yeah, should be interesting to keep track of those numbers. Right now it's sitting at like a 50% or something.
56, I think, is when I last looked at it. Yeah.
Everything considered, obviously, I think this movie isn't going to appeal to everyone. More so, really, I think it's only going to appeal to someone who enjoys the games even remotely. So with that in mind, I think that's probably a fair assessment. Personally, I'd probably rate it more like a 65 or something like that.
It's actually, the audience score is 88%.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah. Which tells you a lot about
that feels a little high. That feels a little in the other direction.
Yeah.
But yeah, 65, 70, I'd give it.
Would you watch it, like, if 6 months from now, if somebody was like, hey, do you want to watch the new Mortal Kombat, would you watch it again?
Yeah, I'd watch it again. It's a fun enough movie. Personally, I enjoy, whether or not it's from a nostalgia sake or just the endless want to see destruction and chaos in front of me. I still think I enjoyed the original one the most.
That's nostalgia talking.
Yeah, and that's fair. I think that's fair. Nostalgia has a place. But I'm still able to recognize that, obviously because this is newer and not hamstrung entirely by a super small budget, that it's good. Just like the classic, it has some definite weak points, but it's ultimately I enjoyed it. So
yeah. I think the best thing that levitates it above anything else is that it's rated R, so they're able to get away with a lot of the fatalities.
Yeah, that is a big plus in its column compared to the original, as it's not PG-13. I think there's one ball shot in the entire movie, and it's no sold. I think Sonya hits Kano in the balls one time.
Is that considered rated R? Like, is that like
no? I was just comparing, like, because the classic one was PG-13 and they can't rely on the ultra violence sort of thing. They rely more on the campy juvenile,
things that
sort of
people would obviously
violence.
cringe at, kind of thing.
Yeah,
but yeah, people. There's a character that gets a hole blown in through their chest.
Yeah, they do a reference to the games. A hole gets blown through their chest, and then the camera kind of scans over it, so you can see
through
the person that did it through the hole, which is
it's cool.
Fatality from, I think it first showed up in MKX.
Yeah, 10.
Yeah. I mean, it's an endless fucking list of references in the movie. So yeah, if you enjoyed the games, you'll enjoy the movie, I bet.
I'm excited for a sequel. I think we'll probably hear very soon about whether or not they greenlight it.
Yeah, and obviously root for more characters to come. Wasn't a huge fan of some of the designs. I think Sub-Zero's armor was a little
blocky. He looked blocky.
Plain. Yeah, but it ends up being. I kind of referenced it earlier. There's a reason for that, narratively, and the guy playing Shang Tsung, Shang Tsung kind of looks a little plain to me as well.
It's because Kiryuki. I just blanked on his name. I apologize. Hold on, let me look it up. Mortal Kombat. The original Shang Tsung was played by Hiroyuki Tagawa, and he's played him for every iteration of Shang Tsung all the way up until
he's fucking perfect, man.
Yeah.
And I also feel similarly for the Liu Kang. Liu Kang, I think, fits a little better in this one.
Oh, no, this one.
In this one, he fits a little better than the Shang Tsung that they have. But yeah, I think both the original Shang Tsung and Liu Kang are like fucking picture perfect. Like they basically pulled him out of the damn video game.
That's why I recognized the Shang Tsung. He is he's the dad in Rush Hour.
Oh shit!
Yeah, the dad of the daughter who's like always saying his daughter's name because she got kidnapped by what's his name. But he's also been in a whole bunch of blockbusters like Skyscraper, Contagion, Dark Knight, Ghost in the Shell. He played Togusa in Ghost in the Shell. So he's been in a lot of stuff. Yeah. Older Asian dad type character, but yeah. You're missing out on the campiness in this latest movie, but whatever. I think we've covered all of our bases for this movie.
Yeah. And then last up, the thing that we both watched finally for this episode is we both watched, to varying degrees of completion, The Shadow and Bone.
That's my middle name.
Netflix.
Oh,
Yes,
no, wait, it shouldn't be my middle name. Varying levels of completion. Uh-oh.
That's your intro middle name from now on for every episode.
No, please. No.
Nick, varying degrees of completion Simmons.
I don't like it.
Shadow and Bone, the new Netflix series that's based off the Shadow and Bone
Book series from
yes.
Lee Bardugo. Yep. So, little preface, little preamble, little pre for you. I was actually introduced to the. Oh, well, okay. I found one of the books when I was at Barnes & Noble, just kind of walking around, drinking my Starbucks coffee, being a total piece of shit. And
nice.
I picked up Six of Crows and I started reading it. I'm like, oh, that's kind of interesting. So I buy it, and then I take it back because, it wasn't for me.
That's interesting. I didn't know this part of the story.
This is like years and years ago, but when the book first came out. And then up until recently, the only way I had heard about it was because your wife has the entire series on her bookshelf.
Yes, she has the entire Shadow and Bone trilogy. There's like 2 follow-up books to that trilogy that she also has, and then there's a Six of Crows duology.
Yeah.
So yes, literally all of them.
So she's a super mega fan. And so she kind of enticed me to read the books after hearing that there was going to be an adaptation. And then after watching the teaser, I'm like, all right, I'll give it a shot. I'll try to finish the series before the show comes out. I am halfway through the 3rd book, because the books themselves, I'm sorry, Casey, are slow and not very interesting.
Did you read Six of Crows?
I haven't read Six of... Okay, so
okay.
We're going to get into that. We're going to get into that. But no, I was reading the Shadow and Bone trilogy, which is the first 3 books that she did.
Yes.
And it's Shadow and Bone, Siege and Storm, and then...
Wraith and Ruin.
Or I think it's Rise and Ruin. I think we're both about to get our butts kicked.
She's not around.
Ruin and Rising or something.
Ruin and Rising. Yeah. That's it. Ruin and Rising.
And I'm in the middle of Ruin and Rising. I should have remembered that. And a lot of it is internal monologue from the main character.
Yeah, it's first person, the whole trilogy is.
And it's not for me. I think it's probably a shining example of why I don't read YA novels anymore. But
can I say something?
No, you cannot. So no, just fine.
Same for me. So just to piggyback off your reading experience, I have read the first Shadow and Bone book, and I have gotten about a quarter of the way through the Siege and Storm, which is the 2nd book.
Yeah.
Before I read Shadow and Bone, I think I've actually detailed my reading experience on this podcast. I actually read Six of Crows before Shadow and Bone because Casey, my wife, has told me that Six of Crows is amazing, like a book that changed her life. And if I was going to read one book from the whole Shadow and Bone conglomerate, it should be Six of Crows. Yes. So I read Six of Crows first, and I really enjoy it. It's a very good book.
And I have not, because I wanted to go through it timeline-wise. That's what you were trying to ask me earlier.
So what I ended up doing, because I read Six of Crows, there's the sequel to that, Crooked Kingdom. Before I went into that, I wanted to contextualize everything, so I decided to go back and read Shadow and Bone.
You fool.
Which, lo and behold, an author's literal first ever published book, surprisingly, sometimes not as good as her 6th. Or whatever, Six of Crows was.
Did this exact situation not also play out for our watch-throughs for Clone Wars? Did we not do the exact same thing? Where you were kind of just watching them like season to season from beginning to end, and I watched them in chronological order?
Yes, you decided to watch them in chronological order, whereas I just said, fuck it, I'm gonna... Yeah, so it was the opposite.
No, it was the same thing. Because I'm actually reading the books in chronology. Anyway, long story short, varying degrees of success and completion for the book series.
I think for both of us, Shadow and Bone, the actual book trilogy is not very good.
Not for us. So when I felt kind of bad because I was reading about how Six of Crows is integrated into the first season of Shadow and Bone, all to contextualize this conversation and preamble. So I was a bit worried because I wanted to try to at least finish Six of Crows by the time the show came out. Couldn't. And come the end of episode 1, I'm like, fuck. All right, well, I guess they're going to be in quite a bit of this first season. Yeah. And I texted Zach, and what did you say?
So you texted me, the Six of Crows will only be in one episode, he says.
Because that's what you said.
I had said, podcast. Because they had the list of episodes had come out, and I believe only one of the episode titles directly references something from Six of Crows, which is called No Mourners.
Yeah.
Which is the Crows,
no mourners, no
mantra?
Funerals.
Yeah, I don't know what else to call it other than mantra, but yeah, they'll say no mourners, no funerals to each other before a job. And the Six of Crows are basically just a band of criminals who like to do big heists. So when I'm reading this episode list, it looks to me like there's only one episode that has them in it, and then sure enough, they are actually literally in every single episode.
Yep, they are literally the B story. And honestly, I'll say this without going too much into we will talk about the show, I promise. Yeah. And we're kind of dodging around it, but the Six of Crows, and we'll keep talking about it, their storyline is way more interesting than Alina's storyline. Yeah. And I get it now. Casey, I get it. I should have read the book. I should have read the book first. I should have done what Zach did. And
just stopped reading Shadow and Bone.
Honestly, her story is I get it, and I've read it, and I've seen it on TV and movies. I've seen it everywhere a million times. I get where they're going to go.
So you finished the whole show this season.
Season, I've watched the entire season. Yes, and you've only.
I've watched 5 episodes, so I'm 3 away from the end. Right. But Casey, who is currently healing from a recent tattoo, had all day the day it dropped to watch it. So I had already told you that she started watching it at probably 8 in the morning when she woke up, and then didn't stop until 4 that afternoon. So she watched it all in a day, and then so because she needed a place to vent, I basically know everything that happens past the point I'm still at. But I also had read everything in Shadow and Bone previously. Yeah, the first book in the Shadow and Bone trilogy, as well as Six of Crows. Right. So I had enough of a basis or enough of a context going in anyways, where anything she told me I didn't feel like was spoiling me, except for the fact that, as it turns out, which I told you upon discussing the fact that Six of Crows were in every episode, is that this is more of a Six of Crows prequel. Yeah. This is not the events of the book at all.
No. There's... the goat essentially saves the day. And it's the same thing as what was it? It was like a rat in Avengers Endgame, where that was the hero that ends up saving Ant-Man, which ends up them discovering time travel, all that kind of stuff. It's a domino effect. The goat is essentially what saves the day. And the goat does not exist in Shadow and Bone. And the fact that they so very closely merge the characters from Six of Crows into the Shadow and Bone narrative,
yeah.
For when they're going over basically the story of the first book, it drastically changes some characters, basic how they're going through this. Events where they made that decision themselves was a decision that was made for them by characters from the Six of Crows, or by causation of their decisions. And
you're talking about the Shadow and Bone characters,
right? Yes. So something that happens to Alina, to where she has to make a decision to do something, is caused because of a Six of Crows character making another. And I'm like, that's not how it played out in the book. So what was the point of reading the book?
Yeah, I mean, so if you read the book, if you read the first Shadow and Bone book, I think ultimately the standard narrative of what's happening is pretty much the same. And again, I've watched over halfway of the season at this point, so, and Casey has basically told me the rest as well. So I know where it differs, but ultimately it's the same. It's just a different way to get there.
Yeah, you're
the fact
I can see that. Yeah,
the fact that the crows are there at all is definitely different, because they're not mentioned. The way the books are structured is they're almost completely isolated in both the trilogy and the duology. There's one instance which I know of in Crooked Kingdom where a character from Shadow and Bone shows up. One or two characters from that trilogy show up.
yeah.
But they're just kind of there. But any other time, they have nothing to do with one another. And so what they've done here is they've melded the Crows, a prequel story of the Crows, into Shadow and Bone to be more directly involved with it.
It's honestly, I feel like it's to give the Shadow and Bone story more oomph, to literally give it more of a push.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree. Coming from a person who read through the first book, like with not disdain, but just kind of like multiple sighs and just with Alina as a character and the Darkling as a character and Mal as a character, like everyone in Shadow and Bone is quite frankly unlikable in the book. And they use, I assume if they didn't put the Six of Crows into the narrative of Shadow and Bone the way that they are with the Netflix series, it would be much shorter.
Yes.
It'd probably be like half the length that the season currently is, which is 8 episodes.
A perfect number, by the way. I think it was a perfect length.
Yeah. As I've been watching, I don't feel like the pacing's been off at all, and it's been very entertaining.
Well, I remember reading an interview that the director of the series, or the showrunner, I should say, they basically Netflix gave them the option to make it as many episodes as they wanted, and they're like, here's the budget. He's like, all right, well, I'm going to do less episodes, that way I can do more with the budget. And honestly, it shows with the set design and costume design and everything.
Yeah. Definitely a good way to go about it. And then, of course, they had Leigh Bardugo, the author of the series, directly involved. Yeah. She was incredibly involved with the production of the show.
Which is what you want.
So, like, this melding is from her directly. Like, she's the one that either made the decision or okayed it.
Well, I don't think it doesn't work. I'm not saying it doesn't work. Honestly, me watching, or I just grammatically, it didn't make any sense in my head, but me watching the first season of Shadow and Bone, the TV show, makes me want to read Six of Crows. I mean, it would, if I hadn't read Shadow and Bone, it would make me want to read that book as well. Honestly, it's a great example of when an adaptation, like, basically entices you to get invested in the series as a whole, honestly.
Yeah, I'll go one even further, and I'll say that the Netflix adaptation of Shadow and Bone, as it stands right now, is miles ahead better than the source material of Shadow and Bone. Just that first book.
Yeah.
Because not only are the Crows like really interesting, all those characters are great.
Jesper's great.
Jesper's fantastic. He's great in the book too.
Yeah.
And they do a great job with casting, and everyone in those roles is fantastic. They're like spot on. Casey felt that Kaz's character was a little off.
He has resting evil guy face. And that's, I think that they cast him that for like that exact reason. But that actor, hold on, Freddie Carter. He actually played a soldier in Wonder Woman in 2017.
Oh.
And he played the Jack the Ripper character in Pennyworth. So he's only been in a few things, but yeah, he just has that face that's like very cut and angular. And I'm not like criticizing the actor's like facial features, but he's very evil looking. So I was like, okay, interesting choice.
Casey's issue with him was that she kind of felt like there were some lines or expressions that weren't exactly in line with how she felt the character was the way they were in the book. But she still enjoyed it, very much enjoyed it. The season entirely, she loved it. They're just that was basically her main little complaint.
That's a pretty small complaint compared to
Yeah,
what
yeah.
you should be upset about.
To me, I've never gotten past imagining Kaz Brekker as V from DMC5. Like in my head, he's always just been V.
Yeah.
So like have the dark mop and everything, but in like literally any other piece of art or like description from the author, he looks pretty much the way he does in this. Just some of the line deliveries, I think she was a little iffy on, but still does fantastic. Still, great job. Everyone's pretty perfectly cast in this. And some people, namely the Shadow and Bone characters, are improved drastically.
What'd you think about Mal? Because Mal is pretty hated in the fandom.
Yeah, so when I read it, I was like, this is fucking terrible because I gotta it's set up as a love triangle in the book where you have your brooding, abusive, manipulative, controlling asshole in the Darkling.
Yeah.
And then you have fucking white bread like dishwater fucking nothing of a man Mal.
He's just like, there wasn't really anything going on for him. And then he ends up becoming worse in the later books. And for like various reasons.
Yeah, that's Casey's takeaway too. And obviously she's read them all. Yeah, in the books, Mal, it's like you end up, Mal is like nothing.
Yeah.
He's just an asshole if he's anything.
Very spot on naming.
So I in the adaptation for Netflix, I actually really like Mal because they take the time to like show the perspective that he's having, and like they actually devote the majority of one episode to him as well. At least from where I'm at, I don't know if they do it again.
If you're talking about episode 5, I know what you mean.
The hunt, or the tracking,
There are scenes that they include in this first season that are not in the books because that's not where Alina is, and I really appreciate that. They're filling in the gaps.
Yeah, or there's extra characters there. Like again, they have to do all these kind of different strategies now that the crows are around, and they're actively participating in it because they've essentially been hired to kidnap Alina.
Yeah.
And you have to incorporate that somehow. So kind of what you were getting at the beginning. It's like the situations you find yourself in with the show are different from the book, but you end up getting to the same place.
That's when I actually I paused the Netflix episode and texted you like, they're only going to be in one episode, huh? Yeah. Was exactly at the moment when they're like, hey, we need you to kidnap the Sun Summoner Alina, and I'm like, well, now hold on, wait a minute, because they weren't in the first book, and now I feel like I really should stop watching the show to read the Six of Crows book.
You don't need to. It has literally nothing to do with Six of Crows other than the characters.
Right.
And there's actually references to other books as well, which is really nice for anyone who.
So the Nina storyline, the C storyline, I'm totally lost in, but I'm fully invested in where her character goes.
So that Nina storyline is actually like even a side story in Six of Crows. Like that's not even an active story. It's kind of told in a sort of not even. Yeah, I guess flashback sort of way, but it's very minor. So the fact that they've made it like a big part of this season is interesting as well, which goes more into it being a prequel. Also, just touching on all these different A, B, C stories and perspectives and stuff like that. Obviously, a bonus that you get from not being ancillary narrative like the first person perspective is in the Shadow and Bone trilogy, where you're just getting Alina's stuff.
I I think if I hadn't read any of the books, this still would be just as enjoyable as if I had read them.
Yeah, I think absolutely. It's definitely a good melding, a good middle ground between giving your readers something to really sink their teeth in, and then also something to entice new fans into it as well. Even to the point where, like I said, all the Shadow and Bone characters I think are done exponentially better here in this show than they are in the books. You actually like Mal. It seems like he's not a complete dick to Alina.
Yeah.
Alina's not like whining all the time. She's actually someone you're rooting for and like invested in.
So two things. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, because I literally had one more character to go. But yeah, what's up?
What was the character? Sorry.
I was just gonna say. So with the Darkling, I never bought into him being a romantic interest in the first one.
But he's sexy now because you can picture Ben Barnes doing it.
That and like in the book, he's from the jump. Everything that he did just seems skeevy to me.
Yeah, and evil.
So
yeah.
like my flags are always are up with him in the book. But in here, with the way that it's played here, it's softer, it's more reserved until it's not. And what?
I was gonna say the reason probably is why they don't call him the Darkling. In the first book,
yes.
and in most of the books, they call him the Darkling.
The Darkling,
but
yes. He doesn't have a name. I mean, he has a name, but he doesn't even have a last name.
But yeah, in the series, they're humanizing him by giving him the name at the front with General Kerrigan Alexander, which was news to me, and I'm in the third book. I'm like, I didn't even know his fucking first name. Did I miss a line that I forgot? But I guess I know his full name now, and he's the Darkling is like a curse word to him in the series.
Yes, there's a couple of different like derogatory terms that people
Shadow
throw
Man.
at him. And, yeah, but yeah, it's much more restrained. So like I'm able to buy into the idea that Alina is kind of like falling for him, even though it lasts like a second.
Yeah,
but it that makes more sense to me than like skeevy dude on a lake being like, you have no idea, or like growling at her and be like, you have no idea what you're in for, or something like some shit like that. It's like, all right, well, I don't really want to talk to you anymore.
Okay, so the two things.
But anyway, go back to your point.
My two things, switching over to Rotten Tomatoes, it's at a 91% on Rotten Tomatoes for critics and 97% for users. Again, only one day out. Give it some time. Yeah. But that's fantastic.
Yeah. And I think it's deserved. You know, it's really good. I haven't finished it, but it's going strong, and I don't imagine it's gonna get any worse. If it doesn't get any better, I have a feeling it'll stay to the same quality that it has. I don't know if you can comment on that at all, as you have finished it.
Well, just kind of reiterating my point of how the crows directly tie into how the narrative ends up. I mean, the main characters from Shadow and Bone still end up in the... Well, yes. Nope. I'm wrong, because one of the characters, Zoya, ends up... No, I don't want to spoil it for you. But one of the characters, who is kind of an antagonist to the hero, ends up being with the hero at the end. And some characters end up in different spots than they did by the end of the first book.
Read Six of Crows is all I'm going to say.
Well, God damn it. Son of a bitch. So I'm sorry for those of us for the people who have been listening to the podcast or watching the podcast, because we didn't really go over the actual story of the series itself. But if you haven't read the books, that's okay. You can go into this series with no knowledge and be pretty entertained. I think that's the bottom line of this discussion. It's a great fantasy series. A lot of people have already been remarking about how it's the new hit show that people should be getting excited for.
It'll scratch your itch for a kind of a darker fantasy sort of thing that leans a little bit more on the YA side. I will say, though, surprisingly, when I started watching this, and the first scene on the ship when they're going to the fold, that's a pretty graphic scene in the book.
Yeah.
They don't shy away from that in the show.
No.
I was a little surprised because it's TV-14, but it's TV-14 on Netflix, so it's a little there's a little bit more leeway on, but I mean, there's people getting like
That's-
fucking heads busted open onto the side of a fucking ship.
That's the
like,
thing is, like, with Netflix, you can never really tell when it comes
Yeah.
to their ratings about how far it'll go. Because, like,
Yeah.
when it gives you TV-14, you're like, all right, but what is
This
it? What
could
is it
mean
really?
anything.
Yeah. It's like the whole PG-13. It's PG-13 until somebody says fuck twice, you know?
Right.
My other thing, I had the two things. The one thing was the Rotten Tomato score. The last thing I wanted to talk about before we end the show was one thing that they made a huge difference when it came to the casting of both Alina and Mao.
Yes.
Because in the books, they aren't really talked about being Shu because they are Ravkin
they're not.
in the books.
Yeah.
So it was a very interesting...
And that for those unaware, Shu would be most closely associated with of like a
Asian heritage.
Asian descent.
Yeah. Whereas Ravkin is more Eastern European, Russian descent. And it's... I texted this to your wife, and she has notifications off, so she naturally didn't respond to me. But I said, I'm only 3 minutes into the show, and it's 300% more racist than the first book. And I didn't mean that as like a negative,
Yeah.
but it's...
I know what you mean. It's commenting on some themes that are very timely
Yeah.
at the moment with all the hate crimes against Asian Americans and those of Asian descent in the United States of America at the moment. It's gotten so bad where they actually have to pass anti-hate legislation in the fucking Congress. So it's very much on the pulse of things.
I thought it was an interesting choice to include it. I mean, obviously they cast the right actors for the job because we both enjoyed the show. That's neither here nor there. But the fact that
they're fantastic.
The fact that they lean into that and use that as a narrative device to also include the topic and discussion of racism in the show as light
and
of a discussion.
it's overt. I mean,
yeah.
like you said, they have just straight up like,
I don't want to give you food because you look Shu.
yeah, back of the line because you're a color I don't like.
Yeah.
Or you look a certain way I don't like. And it's again, it's very much on purpose to the point where they have like World War II-esque propaganda in like military tents.
Yeah.
Very, very interesting change. But I do think that because Alina herself is a more interesting character here, it's just more of a dynamic at play. And again, going back to our Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
I was just going to say we started off the podcast talking about racism and we're ending it with that. So I think it's perfectly bookended.
Yeah. On the nose is not a bad thing.
No. Some people need
Blunt
that.
is not a bad thing. Some people need that shit. And the people that need that shit obviously aren't going to pick up on, the propaganda stuff that's hanging around, but they are going to pick up on the fact that your main character, your hero, your savior of the world for all intents and purposes,
chosen one, whatever,
is being treated differently because of the way she looks, or where she's from, or where it looks like she's from. There's many times where a character is like, "What's a shoe person doing here?"
Yeah.
And she's like, "Well, I'm an orphan. I'm Ravkin."
Yeah, I'm a map maker.
Yeah, but some people can't see past that, and I don't. Obviously, they had cast the respective actors and their roles before we started to see this pretty big ramp up of Asian hate crimes. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's in response to that, but it is
timely.
Kind of, yeah. It's timely, and again, a similar vein as Falcon and the Winter Soldier, where you have a storming of a government building and hostage situation by radicals employed by one person. That
sounds familiar, Zach.
Yeah, something of the sorts. So yeah, I mean, it has a place, and I think it makes it it better, that little addition.
I
it's
think
not
so
just,
too.
Alina's not just a blank slate,
Yeah.
you know, like she is in the book.
Or really any young adult novel series, as much as they try to avoid that. But good. I'm glad you got the same reaction as I did. I thought it was interesting when it came from a narrative point of view. But anyway, that's all that we watched, Zach.
Yeah,
Zach,
that's all.
if people wanted to message us and tell us their thoughts on the themes that we covered, the topics, the movies, the TV shows that we covered in this week's episode, how would they message us?
So you can actually drop us a little message over at our Patreon at patreon.com/lightscameranonsense. We do also have an email, but no one seems to want to use it. But if you want to email us,
fine. You can go to shadowandbone at lightscameranonsense.com and email us there. Or if you're just watching us on YouTube, you can just leave a comment and we will read it and take it into consideration. And, you know, if it's something interesting that we want to talk about, we'll bring it up on the show.
Yes, and then if you're looking for some more physical stuff, you're not into the mental thing, you know, you just want
you don't want to think, you just want to wear.
You want to have some physical fun. Where would they go for physical fun?
Well, I don't.
Where's the physical fun, Nick?
I mean, I don't know what you're implying, sir. All I think you should do, if you want to help represent the show out in the real world and tell people what your favorite new podcast is, that covers all the latest movie news, reviews, and everything else. I know I've already messed this up. If you want to help support us and even rock a cool poster like this Godzilla versus Kong, I already fucked it up. Is it Kong versus Godzilla? Now you got
Godzilla versus Kong.
It's Godzilla versus Kong. I got it right. Like this one, then you can head on over to store.lightscameranonsense.com and purchase it there and hang it up on your wall and hit somebody over the head with it in a tube-like fashion, not in an actual like picture frame, because that's dangerous and don't do that. There's glass everywhere. Anyway,
okay,
I really fumbled that end bit, but this has been lightscameranonsense.com. It wouldn't be lightscameranonsense.com if we didn't fumble every little bit for it. The .com bit. Oh fuck! Yeah. I've unraveled. I'm sorry.
It's all gone to shit.
We're trying to keep you updated.
Life is a fuck.
Despite our best efforts. Make sure to tune in every week for all the latest news, reviews, and what else, Zach.
I do, you do.
Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next week. Oh, you freaked me out. I wait on the body.